Advisory, and he specializes in strategy, operation, and leadership development. I think I want to add this before I even read the whole profile. He's an international speaker. Dr. Maanda, good afternoon. How are you?
Good afternoon, Lukho. I'm doing very well. How do you do?
I am doing well, Dr. Maanda. When did you come back?
I came back on sure. Even I am struggling. I think it was Thursday. I think I came back on
Last week.
Thursday. If it was not Thursday, I guess I've been hit by the same Thursday bug.
Maybe you've got Thursday on the tip of your tongue as well.
Yeah.
Oh, man, welcome. How was the experience, though?
It was absolutely amazing. Just the stage at the Royal Albert Hall, over 5,000 people in the
Sure.
building, sold out event.
Mm,
Absolutely, the conversations, the worship, just the work of the Holy Spirit
mm.
over the 2 days. It's just been so reviving, refueled.
Wow.
You almost want to just stay there. So the conference
Yeah.
was structured that there's time for prayer, time for speaking and worship, and it will
Mm.
go on. Hey, the formalities will end, and they will create an additional space for people to sort of stay in
Wow.
and pray and just continue
Oh,
in
that's
worship.
that's really beautiful. I do know that you guys are bringing it to South Africa as well. I think one of these days we must have a chat about that one because I feel like we want that experience as well. We want that experience.
Yeah, I think yeah, we should make a plan. We should make a
We
plan.
definitely should. We definitely should so that we don't miss out as well. Now, Dr. Manda, over the past two episodes that we've spoken about, we've explored how teams thrive when they feel psychologically safe and, can depend on one another. It's been both insightful and practical, I must say. But today, we move into the next layer of what makes a team truly effective. So, before we dive into that, could you just briefly recap on last week's conversation on dependability and then just introduce us to today's focus?
Lovely. Just to recap, over the past two sessions, we've been unpacking this conversation on building and thriving teams, and we sort of borrowed from the Google's Project Aristotle study, largely because the what they found aligns with a whole lot of frameworks. So we thought we'll sort of peg our conversation on that. So the project Google's Project Aristotle, which set out to understand what makes Google's teams truly effective. They identified five dynamics for high performing teams at Google. Number one was psychological safety. Number two was dependability. Number three was structure and clarity. Number four was meaning of work. And number five was impact of work. So we
Hmm.
unpacked the first two, which is psychological safety and dependability, which
All right.
leads us to our third one. And on the first episode, on specifically on thriving teams, we focus on psychological safety
Mm.
and this sense of trust and openness where team members feel safe to speak up. They can share their ideas, they can admit mistakes, they can take interpersonal risk without the fear of embarrassment and punishment. And
You
if
know,
you
you know
can
what?
have that in a team, then go for it.
So sorry. As you're speaking, I'm actually thinking, and I think I wanted to point this out last week as well. That sense of team members being able to admit where they've erred and fixing those, I feel like it should also really just set a precedence also for the leader to say, "Hey, I'm leading normal, natural
Yes.
people here, and therefore it should pave a way for me as a leader as well to be that vulnerable within the team."
Spot on. And the irony is this: it's often difficult to have team members to have that safety
Hmm.
until the leader starts to admit his or her mistakes.
Wow.
So when the leader shows up and say, "Oh, I asked you to do the following. I think I got the brief wrong from a client.
Mm.
I apologize. This was my fault. That opens a massive door for
Yeah.
team members themselves to say, okay, it is okay, and the leader knows that we are all human, we all
Yeah.
err, and the challenge is when the leader hides his or her mistakes, and the reality is this: the team members can see that that was an error,
Yes.
and this one is
Yes.
covering it up.
You must also know that these people are within the same profession as you. They understand what they're dealing with. They're probably not as grown as you or in a leadership position as yet. But they know when you've blundered.
Yeah.
They know, they can see.
Absolutely. And so, but the extreme end of this is also, we're not trying to sort of say, leaders every 2 minutes go find a mistake and admit,
Of
because then that just
course.
means incompetence, right? So,
Exactly.
so, so not hiding mistakes and not like overly. Oh, sorry, I was me. It was me. I was wrong. I was wrong again. I was wrong. Then we need to have a competency conversation.
Then, Chum, you're always wrong, Cow. Why are you there? Why are you in that position?
So yes, but this is according to the findings by Google. This
Mm,
is key to unlocking the rest. If we
mhm,
talk about structure and clarity and meaning of work and dependability, without the psychological safety, everything else feels like it's this rigid place that I must
mm,
just do what I'm told and go away. But
mm,
but uh, but it's more important that we get the room safe first, and then we can work on the rest of this. So,
yeah.
Dr. Amy Edmondson, who pioneered this concept, showed that in a study showed that psychological safe teams, they learn faster, they innovate better, and they
Mm,
collaborate more effectively. And if you lead a team of some sort, I'm sure I can bet on this, that you want your team to be learning quickly and getting to do things better. You also want to be innovating. You also want
mm,
your team to collaborate with the sum of the part, where the output is greater than the sum of the parts. So for that to happen, as leaders, we are encouraged to create this environment
mm,
where there's psychological safety. And in our episode, we unpacked the role of the leader and what the leaders perhaps might do, as according to Amy Edmondson's latest book called Fearless Organizations. So that was that first one. And then we then went on to speak about, we explored dependability, which is about whether teammates can count on each other to
mm, mm,
consistently deliver quality work. And here it talks to both the team member and also the leader. And as a person listening to us, the first question on this one is, hey, could it be true that someone can say Lukho can be depended upon. She
mhm,
consistently delivers quality work, and she
mm,
shows up, and I can go to bed, rest assured that the work that she promised to be done will be done. And really, here the big takeaway is for leaders: how do we structure work? How do we engage with our team such that each person has got this psychological ownership of the work?
mm,
In that, they're not just doing the work just to pass it on to the next person, but they
yeah.
truly own the work. And not only will they be dependable, they will, most of the times when someone psychologically owns a piece of work, they tend to give a little bit more. They offer
Mm,
discretionary effort over and above, just what they're meant to do. So there is work for us there to ensure that the environment, the team that we're working with, and everyone can say hand in heart that the team members
mm.
are dependable. And when they err, and when they miss a deadline, they take ownership, and we all come together to rescue the project if it were.
Wow. Listen, Dr. Manda, clarity sounds like, something that every team would value. But so often teams will then struggle with, confusion about roles, about priorities, or what success even looks like altogether. So, Dr. Manda, Can you then unpack what structure and clarity really mean in the context of thriving teams and why it matters so much for performance?
Absolutely. So structure and clarity being our third one, which we dive into today. And just to note, even if the team feels safe and dependable, things might still not work out well
Yeah.
if no one knows with clarity who is doing what are the priorities, how success actually looks like. So structure and
Mm,
clarity is about making sure everyone is rowing in the same direction, that there are clear roles, that there are shared goals as a team, and the
mm,
plan to get there is shared and is known by team members. So at its core, it's about, does our goals well defined,
mhm.
are roles well defined, and is our plan for execution super clear to the team members.
Okay.
Now, it's easy to immediately say, yeah, sure, roles are defined. There is a job description somewhere in the
Yo,
HR portal.
your
And
mind's got my thoughts in it as well, because that's what I'm thinking as well. But we know it's not always the case. Dr. Manda?
yes, I think I missed a word or two there.
You know what I'm saying? As much as we know there's job titles or job descriptions, but the truth of the matter is we know that it still doesn't offer clarity with regard to roles.
I'm losing you a little bit, but I forgot what you were asking. There is job description that almost everyone might have by virtue of being employed with a job
Hmm.
with a contract. However, unless if you are in this, like, you know role that you don't that when you started in 1998 and what you're doing today is still the same.
Okay.
The work changes, the projects shift, the environment changes. So, and therefore we can't rely on the job description that you signed when you started. And
Hmm.
here, the idea is to have clarity for the work I'm doing now and what
Mm,
the team expects of me today. And to make sure that there isn't, duplicated work, because as work continues, the work evolves, and someone is now doing more than what they used to do,
mm,
and the deadlines shift. So here it's about, for this work, possibly that I'm doing for this week. It's super clear what my role is and
yeah.
who does what and where. And this requires um, over communication of the clarity of the work that needs to be done. Patrick
Mm,
Lencioni, in one of my favorite books that he wrote, he highlights that one of the key disciplines for a healthy organization is this idea of over communicating clarity. Just
mhm,
because you wrote in the document, just because you said it once that this is your role, the job to ensure super clarity is over communicating, to say, Lukho, the role is 1, 2, 3, 4, and here is why it matters, as many times as you possibly can, until everyone
mm,
knows exactly what is required. Because
yep,
with that clarity, you reduce the friction in the system.
mm,
When things are
mm.
not so clear and things are changing, that's when politics, that's the beautiful breeding ground for politics.
Yeah, yeah. No, clear. Now, it's clear from what you've just shared, Dr. Manda, that clarity is foundational not only for performance, but also for building trust across the team. But sometimes things seem clear, where there's a strategy document, job description, KPIs, but the team is still misaligned. What are some signs that clarity might be missing still? Even when everything looks organized on the surface.
Stunning question. And sort of back up a little bit. We did a study that it's part of the book Lead with Super Clarity, and we
Hmm.
found that we asked people around clarity, and they sort of said to us resoundingly that they seek to have to be clear about the direction of the team and the organization. So there's a
Okay.
role there for a team leader continue to sort of emphasize what the direction is. They wanted to be clear what the roles, how their roles align overall with what we're trying to achieve holistically. I
Hmm.
find sometimes leaders will say, "This is what you need to do, go do it," and then they kind of stop there. And that's not clear enough because people are still curious. When I do this, how does it sort of fit into the whole system? So that clarity is important. People want to know, how how the work impact customers and obviously the future of the company. Now,
Yeah.
they now some of the signs that clarity is missing. You want to look out for some miscommunications, delays on decision making. When something gets discussed over and over again, and people can't really get to the decision, it's one of the signs that perhaps people aren't super clear what priority is and what success looks like, and who's supposed to make the decision, and what the sort of risk parameters look like. When team members kind of keep duplicating the work, when you have done a piece of work and then you realize that it looks like Lukho is doing something similar, if not the same,
And one of us is
and
wasting their time clearly.
one of them is wasting time, and that's a painful thing to be
Yeah.
in, to be doing work that is futile, that is never
Mm.
going to go anywhere. When people keep asking, is this still priority? And perhaps who is really responsible for that? So some of those questions highlight that maybe clarity might not be that things might not be as clear
Yeah. Yeah.
and well structured. And here's the thing, and I'll give you an anecdote from our line of work. Sometimes I find that leaders rely on just the fact that there's an organogram, and therefore we can assume there's structure. And
Oh.
that is just that's just not enough, because the work just shifts, things move. In fact, in our organization at Superlead, we have adopted what we call sort of hierarchy on demand. So even though I'm like sort of the CEO of the company, in one project I'm working for someone, and that project team has to have its own structure, its own clarity of roles, and what we're delivering for the client. and
Oh.
and we kind of do that to sort of not overly rely on organogram and who's got more power, etc., etc. If we're doing a project that Lukho is best suited to lead, she leads the project regardless
Mm.
of who has which title, and we all sort of come alongside. She kind of guides who's doing what by when, and just kind of make sure that there isn't over reliance on something that's written
Yeah.
on a piece of paper called organogram.
Hmm. Interesting, I must say. But it makes so much sense, especially the idea that clarity fuels confidence and helps teams focus. But even with that in mind, Dr. Manda, we know that a lot of confusion creeps in, unintentionally. And many leaders genuinely believe that they've communicated clearly, yet their teams still feel unsure or even misaligned. So, what are some of the common, missteps that leaders make that actually create confusion without realizing it? And how can they begin to correct these patterns?
This is a really important question, because most of the confusions in the team isn't caused by bad intentions. It's often a
Yeah.
byproduct of good leaders trying to move fast, trying to manage the day to day and respond to the pressures, and by so doing, kind of skip some of the disciplines of alignment. And
Mm.
one of the common mistake is overloading the team with too many priorities,
Yes.
overloading the team with too many priorities. And even this statement doesn't make sense, in that um, it's helpful to truly, I tell you, it's helpful to remember when the word priority came into the English language, it meant the prior thing, the
Yes,
one
the
thing
first
that must
thing.
come first.
Yes.
The first thing. And to say that we have like 19
A
priorities,
lot of
you're
first
saying.
things. Oh, Dr.
Yes. and
Maanda.
and if everything is priority, honestly nothing is.
Mm.
So Chris McChesney and his colleagues, they wrote this classic, and it's a relatively oldish book, and it came in. There was a bit of it was a bit of a fad at some in some companies, and everyone in this thing. They called it the four disciplines of execution, and in
Mhm.
short, they call it 4DX. And there's many companies that are sort of saying, "Oh yeah, we've done 4DX, and we've moved on to other things."
Mm.
But in that 4DX, there were such good principles that even after the hype of the 4DX movement might have subsided, I'm keen to sort of explore those four disciplines. And one of
Mm.
the first discipline was, according to the book was focus. Discipline number one: focus on
Mhm.
the wildly important. And what that meant is, this discipline of kind of going narrowing down your goals to one or two that matter the most and will make the biggest difference now.
Mm.
Now, the problem with this thing is, as the authors say, is that there's often way too many ideas in the system than there's capacity to deliver.
Sure.
Every now and again, if you're a leader, there's a good chance that you have a new idea by Monday. Like you're going about on Saturday doing your shopping after a very powerful sermon on Sunday. You're like, yeah, I've got another idea.
Mm.
And the more you throw those ideas in the team, the more it creates this confusion for the rest of the team.
Yeah.
So the idea of kind of, as a leader, to discipline oneself to say what is truly important now that the team must focus on to deliver today.
Mm.
That will be one of the things, perhaps, to sort of put on the table, to say you may want to avoid confusion by holding back and thinking through what you must blow the doors on for this
Yeah.
quarter or for this.
Wow. I actually saw something. I think one of your, I think you said Donald Miller says, if you
Yeah.
confuse, you lose. That's
Yes.
true. That is so true. I saw that and I actually thought about it for a moment. Like, if you confuse, you lose.
Yep. Yeah.
Hey, they're
Yeah.
very
Yeah.
interesting, I
Uh,
must
and,
say.
and how do you confuse? By, as we break English now, by having too many priorities, by having
Exactly. I was
many
about to
first.
say. Then even I, on the other hand, I don't know what's more important to attend to. So therefore, I lose
Yes.
even the important one. I fail to carry it
Yes.
out because I'm not too sure which one comes first.
Yes. And then
Very
you
interesting.
confuse, ultimately you lose. And
But
for
exactly.
for those that you have a boss. I think most people have a boss in one way or the other.
Yeah.
The task here is not to sort of say, this person gave me too many priorities. The task
Mm.
here is to go back and go, so what is the worldly important here? What is truly the prior thing? And I must confess, this happened to me this week. uh,
Mhm.
and so I love my line of work. I love strategizing with clients and stuff. And we got pulled into this call, and then we got involved, and I started committing the team. And one of my colleagues kind of just, after a meeting, and then we're doing other things, and then after an hour, she sort of called and said, "Hey, Amanda, yeah, you're making some commitments there, and we have this project, we've got this deadline. What is truly number one?"
And it's almost as if she's
Good
reminding
point.
you, Guti, hey, you're not alone here. We're a whole team. So I'm calling you out right now.
It
Oh,
did, it
man.
did. Then I had to pedal back, and then I called the client and readjusted the expectations and moved some things out. But essentially, she was kind of going, "Hey, what is the prior thing here? What is important? We have that one. We are due to deliver that."
Your
So this
letters
happens
coming
a
through
lot,
to
and
bite
for
you.
some, yeah, they do, they do, they do.
Oh,
Yeah.
man.
So priority.
Yeah, that's such a helpful distinction, I must say, and it really makes you think about how much clarity we assume rather than confirm. But I imagine that even when leaders do try to clarify, it can still be, fall flat if people aren't aligned or fully engaged. So, what are some of the practical habits or rhythms that help leaders maintain clarity, not just once off, but consistently over time?
Stunning. And then I'll go back to this book because we are in it now and then we might as well finish it. The four disciplines of execution. So the discipline number one is focus on the wildly important. And we
Mm.
kind of belabored this one. Then the second discipline, according to the authors, McChesney and his colleagues, is act on the lead measures. So
Hmm.
once we figure out what's more important, there is what they call lead and lag measures.
Hmm.
Now, by that we mean, you know, we may have spoken about this. You know what everyone's favorite New Year's resolution is, Mus?
Fitness.
That's
Fitness and
the one.
extra
That's the
income
one.
and extra income.
Let's take the first one. The first
Uh-huh.
one, and the guys talk about it as well in the book. The favorite New Year's resolution is to lose weight, right?
Yes.
And so if you think about the journey of losing weight, there are lead measures, which is sort of the calories that came in,
Hmm.
and then the calories that got burnt, right? So,
Okay.
and then the sum total of this thing will result in a number on the scale. So now
Yeah.
the number on the scale is a lag measure, which means it lags two numbers:
Oh,
the amount of calories burnt and the amount of calories that were taken in. So if you just, instead of looking at the scale every morning, if you look at how many calories were burnt and how many came in, the scale number takes care of itself. Yes, no, maybe.
yes.
So now they said act on the lead measures. So find for whatever the team is trying to achieve, try find those two or three levers that you can focus on. If you
Hmm.
just focus on those ones, you know the outcome will take care of itself. So now
Yep.
teams kind of lose their momentum and their structure and the clarity when the lead measures aren't clear. So we are working, but then the weight is not falling off, and we are only just looking at the outcome. For instance, sales teams that are in sales, if we just look at the outcome, sales are down. What are the things that are predictive of the number of sale that the
Okay.
team can directly influence? If we can act on those, we're good.
That's very interesting, I must say. Very, I'm listening to it, I'm thinking that is quite
Um,
interesting.
And the challenge is this: beautiful as it is, oftentimes to find the lead measure, it's hard.
Mm,
And number
mm.
two, you might not have that number in the system.
Ish.
So it's hard. Let's take the first example. It's hard to know how many calories you took unless you do the long process, and people have got apps and things. Number two, sometimes it's difficult to figure out exactly how many calories you burnt. But what's easy to measure is the lag measure.
Mm.
And then the third discipline is the discipline of having a scoreboard that's compelling, that's in front of all of us. So that helps us to kind of stay focused, to say, oh, here are the lead measures, here are the leg measures. Are we pulling the right levers? Are we seeing the right change? If the two sort of swing beautifully together, there's a good chance that the structure and of the team and what the team are meant to do is clear, because they're working on the calories in and calories out, and they're seeing the number on the scale kind of sort of falls off. So in essence, to answer your question very simply, is you do need to have measures that are meaningful for the
Mm,
team,
mm, mm.
these targets, but at a lead measure and less so at a leg measure.
I must say, you're speaking like a true fitness guru. Because for some of us, all that matters is the kgs on the scale, calories and whatnot, and leg measures. Oh, guys, that's too complicated. We don't even go there. I always tell people I'm a weight loss fanatic, but I've never paid attention to calories and all of that. It's the clothes for me. How do they fit? How many kgs are down? And we move right along. That's
It's also helpful to. Oh, I might be missing. I might not. I may have missed a few words there.
Oh, but I'm looking at how serious you are. Now let's get to the next one, Dr. Manda. You know, the idea of a clarity cadence really shifts how we think about leadership. Less about making
Yeah.
grand announcements and more about building rhythm and reinforcement. But as we bring today's conversation to a close, I'd love for us to, zoom out. We've explored the mechanics, habits, alignment, communication, but what's the deeper leadership mindset that sustains clarity over the long haul, especially in fast moving or uncertain environments?
Very, very good. So clarity, isn't just a system that we kind of unpacked and then we borrowed from Chris and his colleagues. But clarity is to a large extent a mindset.
Mm,
At its core,
true.
flows from conviction. Leaders who sustain clarity over time are those who sort of stay anchored on their purpose, who lead with intention, even when the pressures of the work arises. They continue being anchored on their main why, which is big part of why we started with the sort of this the clarity of purpose
Yeah.
at the onset for the leader themselves. Holistically, returning to a place of why we do what we do, and kind of stewarding the organization towards being a little bit more purpose driven, that is key. But on
Yeah.
the day to day for the team, returning ever so briefly to the four disciplines of execution. So, discipline number one we said was focus on the wildly important. Discipline number two, act on the lead measures. Discipline number three, keep a compelling scorecard. Discipline number four was creating this cadence of accountability, the
Mm, mm.
cadence of accountability. And in the book, they recommend, if you have a big goal as a team and you're moving in one direction, you almost want to have this weekly 20 to 30 minutes kind of meeting that's arranged ahead of time for us to sort of come back and say, hey, how are we doing as it relates to the wildly important goal, and how are some of the measures and the targets moving, and then allow the team, here is the key, allow the team to look at this and go, what might we do differently to
Yep.
move this forward? And it's less about the leader now offering instructions, but it's
Mhm.
about the leader opening up to empower the team themselves to
Uh,
go, I think I saw this. I think we could do this based on the call I made last week. I think we could try this. This is where the magic is at. So sometimes
mm.
what happens is we start something and then it goes a little bit and then we lose energy for it. There isn't like follow up meetings. Before you know it, we are back to the possible confusion on what is key and what matters most.
Very interesting, I must say. But Dr. Manda, as we wrap up this week's episode, what would you like to leave our listeners with, especially those who are ready to bring more clarity into their teams and organizations? And how can they connect with you and the Super Lead team to go deeper? Go deeper, bub.
I guess the word will be, abundant clarity.
Yeah.
In my language, I call it super clarity. And this doesn't just sort of happen by default. It's through deliberate leadership,
Yep.
and it's sort of clarifying what we're trying to do, and
Mhm.
setting things to make sure that there is alignment to what
Yeah.
we're trying to achieve. So being super
Mhm.
clear on what's super important, what are the key levers we're going to pull, and having the
Mm.
structures and the rhythms in place for us to can stay the course over the long run. And when we kind of lose our step a little bit, kind of revisit why are we trying to do, get back
Mm.
to the purpose. So the two words for today is super clarity.
Super clarity. I'm
And
not.
and 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 to get hold
Oh, you're back. You're back. You were gone.
and Oh, sorry. And to get a hold of us, we have a WhatsApp number that comes through to the team. And someone who looks at that number frequently at 078 020 0051. It's Manda T at superlead.co.za. And we are keen to engage, we are keen to come alongside you and help with the journey to lead with super clarity.
Oh man, thank you so
And
much, Dr. Manda. Yes.
love. No. We are looking forward to engaging our listeners. I find it so refreshing for me to kind of work the journey with leaders on the topic.
Mm. You know, Dr. Manda, I'm so glad that a lot of people that we get to interact with are leaders. It's church leaders, it's organizational leaders, and ultimately, I think we need to get to a point where we introspect. Are things as they should be in my organization, in my company, in my church, because I feel we could save ourselves so many conflicts, wasted time where our roles are overlapping. And so it creates strife within the team because, look, I'm doing what I've always done. But the truth is, I don't know if what I'm doing, Manda is not responsible for as well. So at the end of the day, we end up having this possessive attitude, which causes conflict even in the workplace, as opposed to saying, hey, this is, yes, we know your job description, things have been added onto it, but with this task in hand, this is what you do, Lukho, this is what you do, Manda. And that could save us a lot of time.
Absolutely. Oh, I think you must do the next episode. But briefly, personally, look, I grew up in a very spiritually powerful church environment.
Hmm.
Where we pray and the spirit lead, and we have conferences and miracles and all that. Heart, like real, and
Hardcore believers.
every now and again, yes, but here's the thing: every, I don't know, year or second year, the church will split
Sure.
on leadership issues, and then split goes half, and I was young, and and even as I grow up, you could almost see leadership challenges right in front of you, and
Mm.
we will fast for days, and we'll do all of these things, and we just sidestep these sort of leadership elements we're talking about. These churches will have these committees. People will kind of overplay their roles, and then the egos collide, and then another split. I cannot tell you. I was back home recently, and I was driving through, and I go like, that church came from the church I was in. That other church came from the same church. Like the church I grew up in is responsible for so many churches in my village. And I it's a reason why I'm incredibly passionate about this work.
Mm.
Leadership matters,
Yeah.
and the many broken souls in those breakups of churches and the groups and things,
Mm.
the number of people that get hurt and others give up on church altogether. It's just too painful. And
Yeah.
this is why this conversation matters.
Wow. Dr. Manda, we could go on and on and on. I'm reminded of a day you and I were supposed to have a session. We ended up chatting about other things the whole session. So hey, we could go on to our news. So I think let me release you for today. We'll catch up again next week. So cool. Have a great week ahead then until next week, Monday. God bless.
You too. Thank you so much, Lukho.
Join us for heart to heart discussions every weekday from 12 to 3